questions. Question orale. L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, in Quebec, this weekend, the masks came off. But instead of seeing people's smiling faces, I instead saw concern on their faces. The cost of living has reached incredible levels, and it hasn't spared anyone. The worst is still to come, according to experts. Throughout Quebec and Canada, gas is reaching record prices, and the Liberal NDP government seems to like the situation, Mr. Speaker. When will this Prime Minister let families get a break during this inflationary crisis? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we understand that the cost of living is a key issue for Canadians. And we know that Canadians, including Quebecers, understand the importance of climate action. Our budget includes a range of measures to reduce the cost of living. For example, dental care, doubling the help provided by the first-time home buyers plan, a one-time $500 payment. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, people are tired of that kind of answer. Do you want to know what the Liberals really think of this increase in the cost of gas? Well, a Liberal member said there needs to be a bit of pain. That's the goal. For the Prime Minister and his cabinet, the more expensive gas is, the better. And too bad if it hurts Canadians. That's the truth. Would the Deputy Prime Minister come to a gas station with me to tell workers that she will help them to actually pay for their expenses? Mr. Speaker, we know that Canadians are smart. We know that Canadians understand that inflation, including the cost of gas, is a global phenomenon caused by the pandemic, by Putin's illegal war in Ukraine, and by the Chinese COVID-0 policy. However, we know that this is hurting Canadian families. That is why our government took action. For example, we increased OAS. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. On a different topic, on Friday, the Supreme Court recommended that Parliament adopt legislation to ensure that when someone commits a violent crime while in a state of extreme intoxication, they can't use that state as an excuse in their defense. Most victims of that type of crime are women, so the Supreme Court ruling could have real consequences for victims. We are ready to collaborate with the government. Will the Minister of Justice present legislation within the next few days to correct the situation? The Honourable Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to making our criminal justice system protect our communities, respect victims, and hold offenders responsible, while also respecting charter rights. We are closely studying the ruling in order to understand its effects on victims and criminal law. I would like to specify that Friday's ruling does not apply to the majority of cases involving someone who commits a criminal offense while intoxicated.
For Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court of Canada on Friday ruled that defendants accused of violent crimes such as homicide and sexual assault can use self-induced extreme intoxication as a defense, striking down a federal law supported by women's advocacy groups. Sexual assaults remains one of the most underreported crimes according to the Canadian Centre for Justice and Community Safety Statistics. This ruling is taking us backwards. When is the government going to respond and put the needs of victims first?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, as I just said in French, our government is unwavering in its commitment to ensuring that our criminal justice system keeps communities safe, respects victims, holds offenders to account, all the while upholding charter rights. We're carefully reviewing this decision, Mr. Speaker, to determine its effect on victims as well as on the criminal law. It's critically important, though, Mr. Speaker, to emphasize that Friday's decision does not apply to the vast majority of cases involving a person who commits a criminal offense while intoxicated.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, the government continues to provide inadequate answers to the real questions facing Canadians. We know that the current system is not set up to protect victims. The lack of self-reporting, victim fear, and psychological stress are only a few of the reasons why this system is failing. Women's advocacy groups, legal experts, and many others are concerned with this Supreme Court ruling. Mr. Speaker, our job is to protect victims, not add to their burdens. When will this government introduce legislation to close the loophole?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Speaker, as I've said a number of times publicly, we are investing in victims and protecting victims within our system. They're always at the forefront. Mr. Speaker, this decision came out on Friday. It does propose a few ways forward. We are studying those ways forward in a responsible manner, Mr. Speaker, in order to get to a response that protects victims and eliminates gaps in our criminal law.
The honourable member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, there were so many Liberals at the protest against Bill 96 on Saturday that it almost seemed like you were at a Liberal convention. There were the members from Montréal, Saint-Laurent-Vimy, Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel, Vaudreuil-Soulanges, Lac-Saint-Louis, Pierrefonds-Dollard, Dorval, Lachine, LaSalle. It was like a Liberal party, Mr. Speaker. And this raises real questions. Is this government's official position right now to go to war against Bill 96 in Quebec? And if not, will the Deputy Prime Minister tell this gang of MPs to mind their own business? The Honourable Minister of Official Languages. No? No?
Okay, l'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the government tabled Bill C-13 to strengthen French not just in Quebec, but throughout Canada. And that is exactly what we will do, while respecting all minorities, Mr. Speaker. Unlike the Bloc Québécois, our members are not handcuffed. They can protest according to their point of view, unlike members from the Bloc Québécois. The honourable member. Mr. Speaker, the federal Liberals are waging a war on French on two fronts. First of all, you have the group of MPs who are protesting Bill 96, and then ministers who have their own Bill C-13, which wishes to forbid a key measure in Bill 96, which is to place federally regulated businesses under a charter of the French language. So they either want to prevent Quebec from adopting Bill 96, or they want to reduce its effects and protect English in the workplace. So ultimately, are the Liberals defending French or the Anglicization of Quebec? The Honourable Minister of Heritage. Well, what the Liberals are doing is defending both official languages, Mr. Speaker. And unlike the Bloc Québécois, our Liberal members are proud, and our Quebec MPs are no less Québécois than members of the Bloc Québécois, even though they don't want Quebec to separate. We are just as Quebec as proud of Quebec, and we love Quebec just as much as members from the Bloc Québécois.
Je pense que son makeover l'a bien servi, là.
I think the colleagues' makeover went well.
Burnaby.
L'indécence atteint maintenant des sommets au Canada.
Indecency is reaching a record in Canada because big oil companies are raking in the profits and giving their CEOs millions in bonuses. And yet, this government thinks that it's a good idea to give them even more public money. Meanwhile, people who are already struggling are now paying more than $2 per liter at the pump. When will this government stop subsidizing polluters? When will it help real people who are paying double at the pump and for these subsidies? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our government has committed to end all subsidies to the oil and gas sector. by 2023. That is a strong commitment. We will do that. And I would also like to say that carbon capture is a key measure in order to reduce emissions throughout the country in sectors like aluminum and steel.
The honourable member for North Island Powell River.
Well, Mr. Speaker, gas prices are reaching record highs across the country, and costs are only expected to increase into the summer. Canadians are frustrated. After years of a pandemic, many have plans to travel across Canada and visit loved ones. But the high cost of gas is ending that dream. While Canadians are getting gouged at the pumps, big oil and gas are making record profits. Then Liberals are handing over more public money to support that profit. How about Liberals be accountable to Canadians? When will this government make big oil and gas pay their fair share?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we already do that. And Mr. Speaker, our government has put forward the most ambitious climate action put forward by any Canadian government in history, including a price on pollution, which is the most economically effective, the most powerful way to get our emissions down. And I want to just remind Canadians that we are committed to eliminating fossil fuel subsidies, and that will happen by 2023, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, gas prices are at record highs and Canadians are suffering as other G7 leaders take action on high gas prices. When given a chance to support a Conservative motion to give Canadians a break at the pumps by dropping the GST on fuel, this Prime Minister and his spend-EP Liberals voted against it. Now, this is the same Prime Minister that said 4 years ago in Vancouver that high gas prices were exactly what he wanted. Right. Does the Prime Minister stand by what he said in Vancouver 4 years ago, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I think everyone in this House needs to be mindful of the fact that none of us should be doing Vladimir Putin's work for him. Right. And that means we all need to recognize the reality and be honest with Canadians about the reality that inflation, including the higher price of fuel, is a global phenomenon. It is being driven by Vladimir Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. It is being driven by China's zero-COVID policy.
Indeed.
Order. We made it to number 11. The Honourable Member of Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Europe has cancelled fuel taxes amounting to over 20 billion euros. In contrast, this government has decided to gouge $2 billion more in fuel taxes from Canadians. Now, the Minister of Finance says that inflation is a global phenomenon, but when her government has a tool to curb one of inflation's main causes, she sits on her hands. This is the only government in the world increasing fuel taxes. Will the minister pay attention to what's happening around the world and provide Canadians the same relief from inflation?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, one of the things that makes the price on pollution such an effective economic mechanism to drive down our emissions is that the money goes back to Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, restart there.
So, Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, the price on pollution is such an effective economic mechanism to bring down our emissions because the money goes back to Canadian families. The member for Calgary knows that in Alberta, a family of four will receive up to $1,079. In Ontario, the province that I represent, a family of four will receive $745. In Saskatchewan, it is $1,100, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, the objective of Canada's carbon tax is to make gasoline more expensive. The Liberal member for Halifax even said there needs to be pain at the pump. Well, mission accomplished. The difference in pump prices between southwest New Brunswick and northeast Maine after the exchange rate is 50 cents per litre. That's $2 in my riding and $1.50 in Calais, Maine. Since New Brunswick's oil refinery supplies both country with pump gasoline, that difference is all tax. So why aren't Liberal ministers and the Deputy Prime Minister taking credit for making energy more expensive? It's precisely what they want.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister.
I would say a couple things to my honourable colleague. The first is, as he should know very well, it's President Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine that has driven up gas prices around the world. We are certainly working to ensure and have instructed the Competition Bureau to monitor the situation to ensure there's no collusion here. But with respect to the price on pollution, I would be quite happy to have a conversation with the member so he understands how it works. The average family gets more money back than they actually pay in the price on pollution. It is an effective way to reduce emissions, but do so in a manner that maintains affordability for all Canadians.
Just need to remind folks that when somebody's answering online, they can't hear the heckles. The Honourable Member from Saskatoon West.
I don't think Putin's invasion affects Maine, but Mr. Speaker, gas is going for $1.88 in Saskatoon today. People have to choose between filling up their gas tanks or putting food on the table. These are hardworking Canadians that commute to work, take their children to hockey, and cook meals for their families. Postponing the increase in the carbon levy is absolutely within this minister's control. She's clearly refusing to act. As a result, she's directly cutting the purchasing power of Canadians and contributing to increasing the cost of everyday goods. Mr. Speaker, will the minister offer immediate relief to all Canadians by rolling back the carbon tax increase on gasoline?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Speaker, the member from Saskatchewan began his remarks by saying he didn't think that Putin had an effect on Maine. And what I would like to underscore for all members of this House is Putin's illegal war in Ukraine is having a devastating effect on the entire global economy. It is raising the price of energy for everyone. It threatens to create a famine in the world. That is what we need to be focused on. And when it comes to the great people of Saskatoon, a family of 4 in Saskatchewan will get $1,101 back.
The Honourable Member for Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, gas prices reached yet another record high this weekend, with many in Ontario and across Canada paying more than $2 per litre. The pileup does not stop there, with drivers being urged to brace for yet another increase. According to a gas prediction website, prices are expected to reach $2.15 per litre for most Ontario cities by Victoria Day. While experts are urging Canadians to stay home and stop driving, countless Canadians across the country, including many in my riding, have no choice but to drive for their livelihood. What does this government say to hardworking Canadians who are being gouged by government inaction?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, like the member opposite, I too am a member of Parliament for the great province of Ontario. And that's why I am happy to share with the constituents of the member opposite and with my own constituents the fact that our price on pollution is not only economically effective in driving down emissions, it puts money back in the pockets of Canadian families. In our province of Ontario, the average family of 4 will get $745 back, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
At well over $2 a litre, British Columbians are paying the highest gas prices in North America. It now costs over $150 to fill up a minivan, more than a day's wages for many Canadians. They are worried and struggling to make ends meet. Other jurisdictions have responded by cutting fuel taxes, but this Liberal NDP coalition voted against a Conservative motion to cut gas taxes and then made matters worse by raising the carbon tax. When will the Liberals finally cut gas taxes and give Canadians a break at the pumps?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would offer to the honourable colleague that to suggest that the rise in gas prices is the result of action on climate change is just ridiculous and shows that the Conservative Party still does not understand both how global economics work, but also how addressing climate change is important. Energy consumers around the world are experiencing a rise in petroleum products, and Canada is not alone on this front. As we see, it is the illegal invasion of Ukraine, which is driving global energy prices. We are working very hard to ensure that we can stabilize those prices. But consistent with that, we are continuing to fight climate change. And as the honourable member should know, the average Canadian family gets more money back than what they pay.
I also want to remind folks, turning your mic on and trying to heckle online is not acceptable either.